First of all, we should congratulate Brett Brown, Philadelphia 76ers head coach. So, Mitch Kupchak was a nervous wreck. Brett, were you a nervous wreck last night?
I was. I hope that I camouflaged it okay, but it's a different feeling sitting up there as opposed to sitting on a couch and watching it on a TV. It's a big night, obviously, for the organization.
Let me make this argument, Brett. I have said I grew up with Patrick Ewing. I'm 50 now. And so you used to get a college player that was 21, 22. He had a man's build. He'd played in the Big East. He'd played in the ACC against other pros. But, Brett, kids come out now, they're 18, 19, 1 year. They're not emotionally ready. They're not physically ready. And they haven't played against many pros. Could I make the argument, Brett, even though you got the number one pick, that draft picks tanking, bottoming out, it maybe doesn't work as well today because you don't get the emotional stability in player you got 20 years ago?
I think that your point is fair if you were looking for immediate reward. I think that if you are prepared to grow that 19-year-old and grow that 20-year-old, then you have a chance to find a potential star. And I reference, my first year in San Antonio was Tim Duncan's year out of Wake Forest. And, you look at that as a 4-year player, and as you say, and I'm with you, I agree with you, you could see that compared to like when I had Nerlens or Jaleel, they are young. And I think you see it especially with bigs for whatever reason.
Yes.
I think the timing is where I might argue. I think you can see it, but I'm with you where you probably won't see it immediately because of that age gap.
Let's say, I'll throw a hypothetical at you. Let's say Simmons and Ingram, and regardless of which one this would be, what if player A you feel is better, but player B is a better fit for your team? How do you reconcile that?
That question has been ever present in our first 3 drafts, since I've been here. And we have decided in previous drafts that we would just simply take the best player and figure it out. So you ended up with 3 centers.
Yeah.
This year's draft is different, and it helps us because the higher end of the draft, they are wings. They're either a point guard, they're a wing of some sort. They are not 5 men. So our position is easier, a heck of a lot easier this year, Colin, where, you can do both. You can take the best player and he still will be the best fit. But in past years, we've opted to go with the best player.
Brett Brown, coach of the Sixers, very exciting time in Philadelphia. I do this with quarterbacks, and I'll do it with Brandon Ingram. I grew up in a thin family. I can't put on weight unless I just eat, bread, French toast for every meal. Are you at all concerned about Brandon Ingram's thinness? His he's a thin kid that needs to put on weight. Would that bother you at all?
I mean, it's certainly not an advantage, but I think it's just part of that pain, I suppose, that you mentioned earlier, whether it's physical growth, whether it's mental growth. Anytime you get somebody that young, you're going to have to deal with probably one or the other. And in relation to his thinness, as you say, I think where he's going to be able to avoid some of the physical problems is his ability with range and distance to shoot over it. I remember Kevin Durant when he first came into the league, and some of those concerns were the same. And, he experienced some difficulty at the start of his career, too. But I think that his skill package, can camouflage some of the problems that his weight might bring to the table.
Yeah, it's a good point, Coach, because Brandon in the new league we live in could do a lot of his work outside. Historically, 6'10s are inside. He'll be outside. And with that said, you're watching Cleveland now all shoot threes. I watched Portland give Golden State fit shooting threes. OKC, Golden State. It's a 3-ball league to some degree. They say Ben Simmons is not a great shooter. Does that concern you?
Well, it does if you didn't sort of dig in like we have. I'm just very aware of Ben's situation. I lived in Australia for a long time. I coached his father for 5 years. I'm aware of his junior coaches throughout Ben's entire life. And when you look at his form, no differently when we drafted Kawhi Leonard with the Spurs, one of the assessments we had to make is, was his shot transferable to the NBA?
Sure.
Was it a total rebuild or was it a little bit of a makeover? And I think that his form isn't one where you just have to blow it up and start over. I think that it can translate. And like LeBron, we saw over the ages,
yes,
we saw his shot grow. So the statistics people, the analytics people always point to it as one of the skills that is most easily fixed over time. And so no is the long answer. I think that we can avoid that and help him if he ends up being a Philadelphia 76er.
Brett Brown, any chance you'd trade the pick, either one?
I can't say for sure anyway. I think that what's happened now is it just brings just tremendous clarity on to what our options are. You know, we've had a change of direction with Brian Colangelo coming in. We have some new scouts on the table. We have Mark Eversley coming in that will help us with our scouting department. We have met repetitively over the past few weeks. We all went to Chicago. You know, we had our scouts come in and try to compile information. I think that this is the responsible time, the exciting time that you weigh it all up and you figure it all out. I feel the bottom line is we really are, and I can't be more happy for our fans that have endured a lot, in a great position to take the next step.
And finally, Brett Brown, Sixers head coach. They have the number one pick. There's varying reports. I've said before, I would take Ben Simmons. I think he's more transformative. I think Brandon Ingram's going to be a really good player. I also think Chris Dunn at Providence is a really good player, which I saw play 8 or 9 times the point guard, and he's 20, 22 years old, something like that. Okay, if I said to you, Coach, I said everybody needs a prototype. In the NFL, if you draft a quarterback, the GM's going to ask everybody, who does he remind you of? Ben Simmons is very unique. There's a little bit of magic there. When you watch Simmons, and you know his background now better than anybody I've talked to, does he remind you of anybody?
I feel like you said the one that most people come up with first, and it's true. You know, he's got a hint of magic. You know, at times you can see like a younger LeBron where you're not sure what position he is. At one moment you think he's a 4, maybe he's a 3. He looks comfortable handling the ball. You know, when you say, what is your identifiable NBA elite skill, most people will go immediately to passing. And you take that collection of comments and you add it into a 6'10" frame, you know, the comparisons to those two players, you know, could be a little bit reckless, could be a little bit ambitious, but there is no denying that he really does come to the draft with a very unique skill package.
Well, Brett, congratulations. I cross my fingers on the health of your players, which is so vital to success in any league. You could ask LeBron about that. Kyrie and Love got hurt in last year's finals. I cross the fingers for so many reasons for Philadelphia. It's a great NBA city. And, Brett, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, Colin, thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Brett Brown, Sixers head coach. He did a good job there.